High in the Sierra Nevada mountains are 760,000 acres of epic terrain, unlike any other in the world. These mighty monoliths of exposed granite are the largest on the planet. The waterfalls are the highest in America. And the giant sequoias are the largest living things on the planet. Thrust from the Earth's mantle 10 million years ago, the land has been scoured by mighty glaciers. This is Yosemite, one of the best loved of all America's national parks. In the heart of the Sierra Nevada mountains is a land of remarkable beauty. Yosemite National Park. Over 1,000 square miles of awe-inspiring wilderness. One million years ago, a succession of ice ages scoured the land. Enormous glaciers carved an alpine valley, just 8 miles long and less than a mile wide, with sheer granite walls rising vertically over 3,000 feet. It's a living monument to the power of ice and water. It is one of the rare places in the world where the view from the valley rivals the view from the peaks. This land of giants has inspired photographers, poets, and presidents. Here, people first dreamed of how to make the majestic land accessible to all and to preserve it for future generations. The first people to discover Yosemite arrived 8,000 years ago. By 1851, descendants of the ancient residents still lived in the valley. In honor of the land they had lived in for centuries, they called themselves Awanichis, which means the people that live in the valley of the gaping mouth, a reference to the towering cliffs of granite on either side of their villages. But surrounding tribes feared the Awanichis, regarding them as a band of renegades. The first white men into the valley were a band of armed militia. When they met the Awanichis, many things were lost in translation, including the name of the people and the valley. As the soldiers explored the imposing landscape, they decided a place of such beauty should be given a name. They chose Yosemite, thinking it was the native word for the valley. But Yosemite was the name given to the people of the valley by surrounding tribes. It means they are killers. At least the next people to enter the valley came in peace. Galen Clark came to California to seek his fortune. But in 1853, Clark contracted tuberculosis, and doctors gave him 6 months to live, prescribing rest and fresh air. So Clark headed into the Sierra Nevadas, where he discovered the Mariposa Grove of giant sequoias. He spent the next 24 years known as the Guardian of Yosemite. Living in a log cabin he built in the heart of the grove, Clark devoted his life to the trees. So great were his efforts, people wanted to name the Mariposa Grove after him. But the humble man politely refused. A replica of Galen Clark's cabin still exists today, both a museum and a monument to one man's struggle to save a forest. In the early 1860s, Clark was becoming increasingly concerned. The gold rush had brought many settlers, and their logging was carving away the forests of giant sequoia across California. Also, the number of visitors to the valley was increasing as news spread about Yosemite's breathtaking beauty. And with more tourists came more entrepreneurs looking to make a quick buck. For the first intrepid visitors, getting to Yosemite wasn't easy. It was a 2-day trip from San Francisco to the feet of the Sierra Nevadas, followed by 3 days on foot or on horseback, negotiating a rugged mountain track. In the 9 years after 1855, only 653 people made the journey. One of the first into the valley was James Hutchings, who hoped to make a fortune promoting Yosemite's scenic wonders. He opened Hutchings Hotel, and to attract more clients, published an illustrated magazine that did more than anything else to bring Yosemite to the attention of the world. Galen Clark was appalled by the increase in commercial activities in the valley. Clark and several other prominent citizens believed Yosemite was a treasure that should be free for all to enjoy. It was an idea unprecedented in human history. After several years of intense lobbying, the idea finally made it all the way to the president. In 1864, Abraham Lincoln paused during the Civil War long enough to transfer Clark's Mariposa Grove and the Yosemite Valley to the care of the state of California. The land was to be preserved for public use and recreation. At the time, this was seen as a triumph of democracy. Never before had a federal government ever set aside a large tract of natural scenery for the future enjoyment of everyone. Yosemite set a precedent for the creation of Yellowstone as the first national park in 1872. But Yosemite still wasn't safe. Although the state of California had appointed Galen Clark as Yosemite's first guardian, he lacked the authority to evict entrepreneurs hoping to cash in on the park by turning Yosemite Valley into a tourist trap.
Mondays on 3Net. Journey to the farthest reaches of our world and beyond for a 3D experience like no other. From the endless mysteries of space to the teeming life and stunning diversity of our oceans, travel to the final frontiers of human exploration and witness the marvels of our world in a way you've never seen before. Prepare to be transported to the exotic, the unique, the distant, and the amazing. Explore the wonders of our universe that exist far above the Earth and far below its surface. Above and Below, Mondays starting at 8, only on 3Net.
By the mid-1870s, 3 stagecoach lines linked the Yosemite Valley to the railroads. With more tourists came more developers, looking for new ways to profit from the sightseers. The entrepreneurs believed that spectacular beauty alone was not enough to attract visitors. In the days before Yosemite became a national park, tour operators needed a gimmick. The same thing had already happened to what was then America's most famous natural landmark. In the 1860s, Niagara Falls had become privatized. Every bridge, path, and viewpoint was privately owned, and the visitors had to pay a fee for the privilege of watching the waterfall. Many people considered that the once majestic scenery had been trivialized by commercial interests. In the 1870s, entrepreneurs were using similar tricks in the Yosemite Valley. Early hotelier James Hutchings built a house around a tree trunk as a way to entice tourists to his accommodation. Competition was fierce, which led to all kinds of unnatural attractions. The most famous was created in 1895, when a hotel proprietor paid 2 men $75 to cut tunnels through the trunks of 2 giant sequoias. Soon, riding a stagecoach through a tree became Yosemite's most famous attraction. The California tunnel tree is still standing and still popular. But while it may have been good for business, it was bad for the tree. Today, park management knows that cutting through the heart of a giant sequoia also slices into the tree's extensive but shallow root system. Weakened by a massive hole in its base, the giant tree may eventually die 1,000 years prematurely. But in 1895, cutting tunnels through sequoia trees was seen as a legitimate way to popularize the newly formed national park. And it was effective. Millions of visitors were lured into the park by the novelty of photographs showing people riding a stagecoach through the tunnel in a tree, or balancing on a ledge 1 mile above the ground. Overhanging Rock is possibly the most photographed piece of granite in the West. It sits on top of a precipice, 3,000 feet above the floor of Yosemite Valley. People once threw objects over the edge to test how long they took to disappear from view. Usually it was rocks. But one hotelier routinely shocked his audience by launching a hen, which would land unharmed and then patiently make its way back up the trail. Overhanging Rock was also a stage for daredevils, dancing ladies, carriages, and cars. The photographs were used as promotional gimmicks to encourage people to make the long, uncomfortable trip into the valley. But the photographs didn't show the transformation of Yosemite from pristine park into tourist trap. Unregulated and poorly protected, the state park was overwhelmed by tourists. Tin cans and garbage littered the valley floor. 100,000 sheep grazed in the meadows. Giant sequoia were either being hollowed out with tunnels or felled to make yet more tourist accommodation. This was the scene that greeted the arrival of Yosemite's most famous defender. John Muir was the founding father of conservation in America. He called Yosemite by far the grandest of all the special temples of nature. But in 1889, he and his friend Galen Clark saw commercial interests desecrating the land they loved. Muir struggled for more than a decade to protect the park. His writings focused national attention on the state's mismanagement of Yosemite and rampant exploitation of the valley's resources. And in 1903, Muir found an important ally. President Theodore Roosevelt called Yosemite the most beautiful place in the world. He interrupted a national speaking tour to spend 3 days camping under the stars with only John Muir for company. In the most significant 3-day hike in conservation history, Muir convinced Roosevelt to take Yosemite Valley and Mariposa Grove away from the state of California. 3 years later, President Roosevelt signed a bill placing all of Yosemite Valley and the surrounding wilderness under federal control. And at last, John Muir's special temple was protected for future generations. Today, John Muir is most famous as one of the patron saints of 20th century American environmental activity. But he also fought other battles. Muir was an amateur naturalist with a passion for geology. From his extensive exploration of the valley, he developed his own theory about how Yosemite was formed. However, it didn't endear him to the most eminent geologist in California.
Mondays on 3Net. Journey to the farthest reaches of our world and beyond for a 3D experience like no other. From the endless mysteries of space to the teeming life and stunning diversity of our oceans, travel to the final frontiers of human exploration and witness the marvels of our world in a way you've never seen before. Prepare to be transported to the exotic, the unique, the distant, and the amazing. Explore the wonders of our universe that exist far above the Earth and far below its surface. Above and Below, Mondays starting at 8, only on 3Net.
In the middle of the 1800s, scientists believed the Yosemite Valley had been created by a catastrophic earthquake. But father of the National Park System and amateur geologist John Muir proposed that glaciers had sculpted many of the valley's features. The head of the California Geological Survey was unimpressed and called Muir an ignoramus. But in 1871, Muir discovered a glacier in the recesses of the Sierra Nevada mountains. The California Geological Survey was proved wrong. 1 million years ago, a succession of enormous glaciers, up to 4,000 feet thick, ground down the Yosemite Valley. The entire valley was filled with ice, engulfing all but the very tallest peaks and gouging the granite into a characteristic U-shaped trough lined with sheer cliffs. The vast granite monoliths of El Capitan and Half Dome were formed more than 80 million years ago, when molten magma from deep beneath the surface slowly pushed up into enormous cracks in the Earth's crust. As the molten rock slowly cooled, the magma crystallized into granite. When the Sierra Nevada mountains were thrust into the sky, the mighty columns of rock were pushed to the surface, only to be ground down by glaciers. The smooth, gleaming rock provides the park with its unforgettable scenery and a challenge for generations of adventurers. For the Yosemite Valley lies at the heart of American rock climbing. Early in the 1900s, climbers, equipped with the latest mountaineering techniques from Europe, blazed trails up the soaring peaks of Yosemite. But they soon encountered challenges unlike anything seen in Europe. Traditionally, climbers relied on hand and footholds to make their way up the mountainside. But the steep granite cliffs of Yosemite had been ground smooth by glaciers. Climbers had to develop new techniques, which relied more on balance and subtlety than brute strength. Instead of relying on handholds, climbers learned to jam hands and feet into cracks in the slick, polished rock. Maneuvering up the cracks and crevices requires confidence and enormous stamina. But once armed with their impressive new skills, climbers sought out bigger and bigger walls. And no place on Earth had enormous walls in a more accessible location than Yosemite National Park. The vertical cliffs lining the valley are the largest exposed granite monoliths in the world. As recently as the 1950s, the vertical face of El Capitan, towering 3,300 feet above the valley floor, was considered impossible to climb. Today, free climbers can ascend the sheer granite in little more than 2.5 hours. The massive cliffs are a testament to the power of ancient rivers of ice. Water continues to shape the landscape today. Nowhere else in the world is there such a concentration of enormous waterfalls.
Mondays on 3Net. Journey to the farthest reaches of our world and beyond for a 3D experience like no other. From the endless mysteries of space to the teeming life and stunning diversity of our oceans, travel to the final frontiers of human exploration and witness the marvels of our world in a way you've never seen before. Prepare to be transported to the exotic, the unique, the distant, and the amazing. Explore the wonders of our universe that exist far above the Earth and far below its surface. Above and Below, Mondays starting at 8, only on 3Net. This month on 3Net, see the world in 3D as only IMAX can show you. Galapagos brings you closer than ever before to the place where land's oldest reptiles meet the mammals of the marine and one of the last pristine places on Earth. L5 launches you into the future, to a city in outer space where humans will live in and travel throughout our very own solar system. NASCAR puts you in the driver's seat for the heart-pounding 3D thrills of America's most popular spectator sport. And T-Rex takes you back 65 million years for a prehistoric adventure that brings you face to face with the fiercest of the dinosaurs. This month, only on 3Net.
The last glacier retreated from the Yosemite Valley about 10,000 years ago. But the national park is still defined by ice. In winter, large storms sweep in from the Pacific, carrying tremendous amounts of moisture. As they move up and over the Sierra Nevada mountains, the air dramatically cools and water falls out of the sky as snow. In spring and early summer, the snow melts. In this alpine land of barren granite, there's little soil to soak up moisture. So the melted snow runs quickly off the mountains. The water follows the path gouged by ancient glaciers that once flowed into the massive river of ice that carved the Yosemite Valley. The small tributary glaciers had less erosive power. So when the ice retreated, the ends of the tributaries were left hanging high on the rim of the canyon. Today, water replaces ice, and it pours over the cliffs where the glaciers ended. Yosemite National Park has the greatest concentration of significant waterfalls on the planet. Most of the water was snow, less than 24 hours earlier. In spring, astonishing amounts of water flow down the Yosemite Creek. At its peak, more than 300 cubic feet of water per second race downstream. That's enough water to fill the Louisiana Superdome in just 24 hours. When the water of Yosemite Creek finally reaches the granite cliffs on the side of the valley, it creates the 5th highest waterfall in the world. The Yosemite Falls are the highest in North America and one of the most famous sites in the national park. The waterfall descends 2,425 feet in 3 separate cascades. The upper falls are the easiest to see, plunging over 1,400 feet, the height of the Sears Tower in Chicago. The upper falls alone are big enough to be in the top 20 highest waterfalls in the world. Beneath the huge upper falls are a series of 5 smaller plunges, collectively referred to as the Middle Cascades. Although these falls descend more than half the height of the Empire State Building, the narrowness of the gorge means they're hard to see. The final 320-foot drop of the lower falls is the most accessible and one of the most popular attractions in Yosemite Valley. In spring, there are over 40 magnificent waterfalls thundering throughout Yosemite National Park. By the end of summer, the number can be much smaller. One of the few to run all year round is the 620-foot Bridal Veil Fall, named because the wind often blows the water sideways and the cascade looks like a bride's veil. The headwaters of the Bridal Veil run through extensive meadows and forest, which act like a giant sponge, soaking up the melting snow, guaranteeing a constant flow. From April through July each year, water pours into Yosemite Valley from every cliff top. Other famous giants in the park are present all year round and can be more than 3,000 years old.
This month on 3Net, see the world in 3D as only IMAX can show you. Galapagos brings you closer than ever before to the place where land's oldest reptiles meet the mammals of the marine and one of the last pristine places on Earth. L5 launches you into the future, to a city in outer space where humans will live in and travel throughout our very own solar system. NASCAR puts you in the driver's seat for the heart-pounding 3D thrills of America's most popular spectator sport. And T-Rex takes you back 65 million years for a prehistoric adventure that brings you face to face with the fiercest of the dinosaurs. This month, only on 3Net.
The Mariposa Grove in Yosemite National Park contains over 500 mature giant sequoias, the largest living things on Earth. Some sequoias can be 50 feet in diameter, making them the world's widest trees. They can stand more than 300 feet tall, as high as the Statue of Liberty. The giants are firmly anchored, with roots reaching out more than 200 feet, meaning a large sequoia is spread under 4 acres of the forest floor, an area equivalent to more than 3 football fields. One of the most famous trees in Yosemite National Park is called the grizzly giant. 200 feet high, 28 feet wide, and over 1,800 years old. The grizzly giant is thought to be the oldest tree in Mariposa Grove. Giant sequoias grow surprisingly fast. For the first 100 years, they grow 2 feet a year. But just like humans, when they get older, they stop growing up and start spreading out. The massive trunk of the giant sequoia never stops growing, and at a rate far surpassing that of any other tree. In good conditions, a giant sequoia increases in width by 1 inch every year. Theoretically, giant sequoias could keep on growing forever. The most ancient trees are over 3,000 years old. Death comes only by wind or fire. The blackened trunk of the grizzly giant bears the scars of countless wildfires. Covered with a protective layer of bark up to 4 feet thick, sequoias are amazingly resistant to flames. Big trees do lose some branches in forest fires, and the rest to natural pruning, which is why they have bare trunks all the way up to 150 feet above the ground. The massive branches are more than 7 feet wide, bigger than the trunk of any other tree species in the forest. The sheer scale of the giants becomes apparent when they're lying down. The interior of this fallen, fire-hollowed sequoia was so spacious, the U.S. cavalry used it to stable 32 horses. And when the cavalry moved on, various entrepreneurs turned the tree into everything from a summer residence to a saloon. This sequoia crashed to the ground more than 300 years ago and is called the fallen monarch. If undisturbed, the remains of this tree could linger for many more centuries to come, because its wood is resistant to rot. In life, giant sequoias pump their timbers full of tannic acid, a potent poison that suppresses the growth of bacteria and fungi, essentially arresting decay. Only when rain and snow leach the tannic acid from the wood does the tree dissolve slowly back into the earth. Back in the 1800s, loggers looked at the giant sequoias in awe. The trees were so big, often containing enough timber to build over 40 five-room houses, and the wood was almost indestructible. But there was a problem. The wood from the giant sequoias was so incredibly brittle, the trees would shatter when they hit the ground. Only about half the timber contained in a tree ever made it to the sawmill. The fragile timber from sequoias was so unsuitable for use in construction. The giants of the forest were often felled to make fence posts, roof shingles, and even matchsticks. Those days are now long gone, as the majestic sequoias are protected within the national park boundaries. But there are other trees in Yosemite that require more intensive management.
This month on 3Net, see the world in 3D as only IMAX can show you. Galapagos brings you closer than ever before to the place where land's oldest reptiles meet the mammals of the marine and one of the last pristine places on Earth. L5 launches you into the future, to a city in outer space where humans will live in and travel throughout our very own solar system. NASCAR puts you in the driver's seat for the heart-pounding 3D thrills of America's most popular spectator sport. And T-Rex takes you back 65 million years for a prehistoric adventure that brings you face to face with the fiercest of the dinosaurs. This month, only on 3Net.
The mighty sequoias of Yosemite are a living memorial to one of the national park's unsung heroes. Galen Clark, the guardian of Yosemite, was the first person to bring the ancient giants to the attention of the world and lived to see his precious trees protected forever within the Yosemite National Park. Galen Clark was 96 when he died and was laid to rest among the sequoias he spent his life serving. But Clark wasn't the first to care for the forests in the valley. Yosemite's original inhabitants also practiced a sophisticated system of land management. Native Americans established more than 30 village sites in the Yosemite Valley over centuries of human occupation. The people of Yosemite lived in wooden teepees, 12 feet in diameter. Built with slabs of cedar bark, The warm, waterproof constructions could house a family of 6 and all their possessions, including the dog. More substantial were the earth lodges, about 40 feet in diameter, used for ceremonies. The entrance tunnel leads down into a shallow pit, covered in a frame of poles and a thatch of brush topped with dirt. Some lodges were underground sweat houses, used regularly by deer hunters. A long steam, followed by a quick dip in the river, removed the telltale human scent. But hunting alone didn't provide enough food to survive the long, cold winters. So the Yosemite women went in search of acorns. Each fall, tons of black acorns would be collected and packed into specially constructed storehouses, lined with pine needles and wormwood, to discourage insects and rodent thieves. In the fall, the family would sleep outside, since the wooden teepees were also packed full of nuts. Raw acorns are inedible, full of poisonous tannins. But with a lot of effort, Yosemite women could turn acorns into bread. First, the nuts had to be pounded into fine flour, which was then repeatedly rinsed to leach out the toxic tannins. Baked on hot stones, black acorn flour helped the Yosemites survive the long winter. And in turn, the Yosemites helped the survival of the black oak. The oak groves of Yosemite Valley are an iconic scenic feature, especially in fall. But for many years, park authorities have been concerned that the population of trees is in decline. A survey in 2005 confirmed that there were fewer black oak trees than 60 years earlier, and the survivors were all mature oaks. The population was declining because more trees died than were replaced through new germination. Scientists discovered that many black oak seedlings and saplings failed to mature because now there's nobody to look after them. The Yosemite Indians once intensively managed the trees in the valley, using fire to favor oak trees and maximize the acorn crop. They actively protected young oak seedlings. Without Native American guardians, the oak forest is slowly disappearing, to be replaced by mighty conifers. Humans have left their mark on Yosemite National Park. While we no longer drive cars through tunnels cut in giant sequoias or turn hollow trees into saloons, today the sheer number of people wishing to see the splendor of the landscape requires careful management. Preserving the land for future generations means finding a balance between tourism and sound conservation. John Muir, the most passionate protector of this land, once said that the tourist, however frivolous, was a hopeful sign of the times, indicating at least a beginning of a return to nature. More than a century later, tourists still love Yosemite. For like John Muir, many feel that going to the mountains is like going home. Yosemite's high peaks and cathedral-like valley are among the world's finest natural treasures. Although Yellowstone was America's first designated national park, the idea for preserving a pristine land was born at least 8 years earlier here in Yosemite. It is said a culture is measured by what it preserves. So America can be justly proud of Yosemite National Park. A shrine to the strength of granite, the power of glaciers, and human foresight in creating one of America's most beloved national parks.